6 months had passed since the successful mission on Keldris 7. Kang Day stood in the same weapons engineering lab where his journey had begun, but everything had changed. The room was now filled with students from 20 different species, all practicing with compound bows, crossbows, and slings. What had started as one human's midterm project had become a military revolution. Lieutenant Kang Day now wore the uniform of the Coalition Special Warfare Division. The promotion had come quickly after the Keldris 7 mission report reached the highest levels of military command. The intelligence data captured from that outpost had led to successful operations across 6 different star systems. Every mission followed the same pattern: silent infiltration using primitive weapons, zero energy signatures, complete tactical surprise. The Kaldreth Dominion had been forced to completely rethink their defensive strategies. For decades, they had built their security around detecting energy weapons and advanced technology. Now they faced an enemy that attacked with arrows and throwing spears, weapons their sensors couldn't see until it was too late. Their military analysts were still trying to understand how the most advanced coalition in the galaxy had gained advantage through obsolete technology. Kang Day walked through the training facility, watching Instructor Vexil teach a group of insectoid students how to properly draw a compound bow. The Thraxian had become one of the most enthusiastic supporters of primitive weapons training. His damaged drone from that first demonstration still sat in a display case on the wall, a permanent reminder of the day everything changed. "Your form is improving," Kang Day told one of the students, a young recruit whose name translated to something unpronounceable in human speech. "Remember to keep your elbow high and release smoothly. The bow does most of the work." The student nodded gratefully and continued practicing. Kang Day moved on, checking on other training sessions throughout the facility. In one room, Tolomon taught advanced sling techniques to a class of 30 students. The Sorix had become the first non-human master instructor of primitive weapons, and his enthusiasm was infectious. "The key is rhythm," Tolomon was explaining, demonstrating the whirling motion. "Build speed gradually, feel the weight, then release at the perfect moment. It's not about strength, it's about timing and technique." Kang Day smiled, watching his former rival turned close friend. Tolomon had proven that these weapons weren't just for humans. Any species could learn to use them effectively with proper training. Some species, like the Sorix with their flexible spines, could generate even more power than humans with certain throwing weapons. In another section of the facility, Dr. Yuna worked with a team of engineers developing new variations of primitive weapons adapted for different alien physiologies. A species with 4 arms could use specialized bows that normal humans couldn't even hold. Flying species were being trained with aerial deployment systems for war darts. Every species brought unique advantages to primitive weapons use. Hana found Kang Day in the observation deck overlooking the main training floor. She had been promoted to captain, after her intelligence reports on human innovation helped shape new military doctrines. Their relationship had evolved from professional to personal over the past months. She handed him a datapad with the latest operation reports. "Another successful mission," she said. "Special Operations Team 7 used crossbows and blowguns to infiltrate a Kaldreth command ship. They disabled the ship's bridge crew and captured the vessel intact. 0 casualties on our side." Kang Day reviewed the report. These successes kept coming, mission after mission. The Kaldreth were losing ground across multiple fronts, not because they lacked advanced weapons, but because their entire defensive strategy had become obsolete against an enemy using primitive technology. "The Strategic Council is meeting today," Hana continued. "They're discussing the Kaldreth peace proposal. Their ambassador admitted in preliminary talks that they never anticipated the coalition would adapt primitive weapons. They prepared for plasma and railguns. They never prepared for arrows in the dark. Will there be peace?" Kang Day asked. "Probably. The Kaldreth have lost too many strategic positions. They're requesting negotiations from a position of weakness. Your slingshot might have ended a 6-year war." Kang Day looked out at the training floor where hundreds of students practiced with weapons that humanity had invented thousands of years ago. It still felt surreal sometimes. He had just wanted to pass his midterm assignment. Instead, he had changed how an entire galactic coalition thought about warfare. Commander Hyuk, now Colonel Hyuk, entered the observation deck. The scarred veteran commanded the 1st Silent Strike Regiment, an elite unit that used exclusively unpowered weapons for covert operations. His unit had the highest success rate and lowest casualty count of any special operations force in the coalition military. "The council wants you at the academy," Hayek said. "They're bringing in a new class of cadets. Admiral Cross specifically requested that you give the opening lecture on weapons engineering." That's how Kang Day found himself back in the same classroom where his journey had begun. But instead of 40 students, there were now 200, representing 30 different species. The room had been expanded to accommodate the increased interest in weapons engineering. Every seat was filled with young cadets eager to learn. Instructor Vexil stood at the front, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled students. "Today we have a special guest instructor, Lieutenant Kang Day of the Coalition Special Warfare Division. Many of you have heard stories about what happened in this very classroom 6 months ago. Today, you'll hear the truth directly from the person who changed modern warfare." Kang Day walked to the front of the class. He carried his original slingshot, the simple weapon that had started everything. He placed it on the demonstration table where everyone could see it. In the display case on the wall behind him, Instructor Vexil's damaged drone sat as a permanent reminder. "My name is Kang Day," he began, his voice steady. "6 months ago, I sat where you're sitting now. I received the same midterm assignment you're about to receive. Design and build a ranged weapon using only basic materials. No advanced power sources. No complex electronics. Just your creativity and understanding of physics." He picked up the slingshot. "Some of you are already thinking about what you'll design. Some of you are planning elaborate weapons with multiple features. Some of you think this assignment is too simple to be challenging. I thought the same thing. I was wrong." A young human cadet raised her hand. Her name was Mira, newly arrived from Earth. "Lieutenant Kang, I heard you hit the instructor's drone with a slingshot. Is that true?" "Yes," Kang Day confirmed. "I built this weapon and successfully hit a moving target that more advanced weapons couldn't track. But that's not the important part of the story." He walked across the front of the classroom, making eye contact with students of various species. "The important part is why I chose a slingshot in the first place. I could have designed something more complicated. I could have tried to impress everyone with elaborate engineering. Instead, I built something simple that actually worked." Kang Day held up the slingshot. "Humans invented this over 3,000 years ago. It survived that long because it works. It's efficient, reliable, and effective. When I built this, other students laughed. They thought primitive meant inferior. They were wrong." He set the slingshot down and gestured to the display case. That drone was protected by military-grade shielding designed to stop plasma bolts and hypersonic projectiles. My simple slingshot destroyed it because the designers never considered that someone would attack with a weapon moving at subsonic speeds. They prepared for advanced threats and ignored basic ones. The students listened intently now. This wasn't just a story about passing a class. This was about how warfare across the entire galaxy had been forced to change. "Over the past 6 months, I've learned something important," Kang Day continued. "The best solution is not always the most complex one. Sometimes the answer to tomorrow's problems can be found in yesterday's wisdom. The Keldrith Dominion had the most advanced sensor networks in the galaxy. They could detect any energy weapon from kilometers away, but they couldn't detect arrows, couldn't detect thrown spears, couldn't detect weapons that their sophisticated systems weren't programmed to recognize." He looked at the assembled students, seeing their various species represented. "You come from different worlds with different technologies. Some of your civilizations developed plasma weapons before humans even discovered fire. But I want you to understand something fundamental. Advanced doesn't always mean better. Complex doesn't always mean effective. Sometimes the simplest tool in skilled hands can achieve what the most sophisticated weapon cannot." Another student raised a tentacle. "But doesn't this mean we should abandon advanced technology? Should we all just use primitive weapons?" "No," Kang Day said firmly. "It means we should use the right tool for each situation. Plasma rifles are excellent for many combat scenarios. Railguns have their place. Energy weapons are powerful and effective, but they're not always the best choice. Now coalition forces carry both modern weapons and primitive weapons. We've learned to adapt our tactics to whatever the situation require." His demonstration convinced enough admirals to approve a field test. Now 2 weeks later, Kang Day found himself on a transport ship heading toward the forest moon of Keldrith 7. He sat with Commander Hugh and a 12-person special operations team that included Talmon and 3 other volunteers from the academy. None of them carried plasma rifles or energy weapons. Instead, they had bows, crossbows, slings, and war darts. "Tell me again why we're doing this," Lieutenant June said nervously. The human soldier had 15 years of combat experience, all with conventional weapons. Now he was heading into enemy territory with what he considered ancient tools. Commander Hyuk checked his compound bow for the 10th time since boarding the ship, because conventional weapons failed twice already. The Keldrith sensor station on Keldrith 7 can detect any energy weapon within 5 kilometers. Their automated defenses destroyed 2 assault teams before they got within 1,000 meters. Every soldier who carried a plasma rifle or energy blade lit up their detection grid. But arrows? Lieutenant June looked doubtful. "Arrows don't produce energy signatures," Kang Day explained patiently. He'd had this conversation many times over the past 2 weeks. The Keldrith sensors are sophisticated, but they're programmed to detect modern weapons. To their systems will look like wildlife or environmental noise. At least that's the theory. "I hate theories that I have to test with my life," June muttered, but he checked his crossbow anyway, making sure the mechanism was properly maintained. The transport landed 10 kilometers from the target. The team would hike through dense alien forest to avoid detection. As they gathered their equipment, Kang Day felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. If this mission failed, people would die. If it succeeded, humanity's ancient weapons might become standard issue across the coalition military. The forest of Keldrith 7 was unlike anything on Earth. The trees grew in spirals, their bark glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Strange creatures moved through the canopy, their calls echoing through the twilight. The team moved in formation, Commander Hyuk leading with Kang Day close behind. They hiked for 6 hours before encountering their first test. A Keldrith patrol drone appeared above the tree line, its sensors sweeping the area. Everyone froze. This was the critical moment. If the drone detected them, the entire mission would be compromised. The drone passed overhead, its sensors washing over the team. Kang Day held his breath. The drone continued its patrol pattern without slowing or changing course. It hadn't detected them. The theory was working. "That's one question answered," Commander Hyuk whispered. "Now let's see if we can kill one quietly." They continued forward and encountered another patrol drone an hour later. This time Kang Day raised his crossbow. The drone hovered about 80 meters away, its back to their position. He aimed carefully, accounting for distance and the slight breeze moving through the forest. He squeezed the trigger mechanism. The bolt flew silently through the air and struck the drone's central processing unit. Sparks erupted briefly before the machine fell from the sky without transmitting any alert. The entire team stared at the fallen drone, then at Kang Day. "You made that look easy," Lieutenant June said with newfound respect. "I've been practicing," Kang Day replied, reloading his crossbow. "Let's keep moving." They reached the outpost perimeter at nightfall on the second day. The Keldrith had built their sensor station inside a fortified compound with walls 3 meters high, guard towers at each corner, and patrol patterns covering every approach. Intelligence reports indicated 30 soldiers inside, plus automated defenses and combat mechs. Commander Hyuk gathered the team for final briefing. "We go in silent. No alerts, no alarms. Kang Day and Tallman take out the external sensors. Lieutenant June and his team handle the wall guards. Once we're inside, we move fast and quiet. Our target is the command center. We need their data intact." Kang Day loaded his sling with specially designed projectiles. These weren't simple ball bearings, but shaped rounds designed to shatter sensor arrays without creating large explosions. He moved along the perimeter, identifying each external sensor, calculating angles and distances. The first sensor shattered under his projectile, then the second, then the third. Each impact was precise, destroying the equipment without triggering alerts. The Keldrith security system registered the failures as technical malfunctions, not attacks. Meanwhile, Tallman moved to the guard towers. He had become remarkably skilled with the atlatl over the past weeks. The weapon suited his physiology perfectly. He loaded a dart, took aim at a Keldrith guard 70 meters away, and threw. The dart flew with incredible force and accuracy, striking the guard before he could raise an alarm. The second guard died the same way. Then the third. Each kill was silent, each body falling without alerting others. The team reached the compound wall without raising any alarms. Getting over the wall presented a new challenge, but they used simple climbing equipment that produced no energy signature. Once inside, they moved through shadows using their primitive weapons to eliminate patrols. Crossbow bolts took down guards at medium range. Thrown war darts handled closer targets. Everything was silent. Everything was efficient. They reached the main building housing the command center. Here, things got more complicated. Kaldreth soldiers moved through corridors in organized patterns. The team couldn't just fight their way through without raising alarms. Kang Day had prepared for this. Dr. Yuna had developed fast-acting sedatives that could be delivered through blowgun darts. The darts were small, silent, and left no visible mark. Kang Day and 2 other team members moved ahead, using blowguns to disable guards systematically. Each Kaldreth soldier collapsed quietly, their nervous systems shutting down before they could call for help. The team penetrated deeper into the facility. They encountered a combat mech guarding a critical junction. The machine stood 3 meters tall, heavily armored with multiple weapon systems. Previous assault teams had lost soldiers to these mechs. Conventional weapons could barely damage their armor. Commander Hayuk signaled for everyone to take cover. He looked at Kang Day and nodded. They had practiced this scenario during training. Kang Day pulled out a bola, a traditional throwing weapon consisting of weights connected by cords. He whirled it overhead, building momentum, then released. The bola wrapped around the mech's legs, the weights tangling in its joint mechanisms. The machine stumbled and tried to free itself. While it was distracted, Tolman threw war darts at its cooling vents, the specialized projectiles penetrating gaps in the armor and destroying internal components. The mech collapsed without firing a shot. The team moved past its disabled form and continued toward the command center. They were close now, just 1 corridor away from their objective. Then everything went wrong. A door opened unexpectedly and a Kaldreth officer stepped out, finding himself face to face with the infiltration team. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then the officer reached for his communication device. Lieutenant June fired his crossbow instinctively. The bolt struck the officer's hand, pinning it to the wall before he could activate the alert. 2 other team members rushed forward, subduing the Kaldreth before he could shout for help. But the damage was done. Someone had seen them. "Move fast," Commander Hayuk ordered. "We're compromised." They breached the command center door to find the Kaldreth commander waiting. He stood at the main console, his hand over a control panel. On the monitors behind him, Kang Day could see that he'd been watching their infiltration through internal cameras. "Impressive," the Kaldreth commander said in translated speech. "I've been observing your approach. Primitive weapons, clever. Our sensors never detected you because we weren't looking for such old technology." His hand moved closer to the control panel. "But it doesn't matter now. I've activated the facility's self-destruct sequence. In 4 minutes, this entire compound will explode with enough force to kill everyone within 500 meters. That includes your coalition staging forces waiting outside the perimeter." "Shut it down," Commander Hayuk demanded, raising his bow. "I don't think so. Our security protocols require my biometric scan and authorization code to cancel the countdown. If you kill me, everyone dies. If you try to force me, everyone dies. Your only option is to retreat and hope you can get far enough away in time." 3 minutes and 40 seconds remained. The team could run, but they'd be abandoning the mission and leaving hundreds of coalition soldiers in danger from the explosion. They could kill the commander, but that would prevent any chance of stopping the self-destruct. Kang Day looked at the reinforced command center door. It was 40 centimeters of durasteel, designed to withstand military-grade explosives. The locking mechanism was electronic, sealed tight, and there was no time to hack it. He looked at the commander, at the countdown timer, at his team's expectant faces. Then he remembered something from Earth's history. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best solution. He pulled out his staff sling and a specially designed projectile that Dr. Yuna had created for penetrating armored targets. The projectile was a shaped cone filled with thermite compound, a mixture that burned at temperatures hot enough to melt through almost anything. "Everyone get back," Kang Day ordered. Research Division 7 occupied an isolated wing of the academy that most students never saw. Kang Day walked through security checkpoints that scanned him 3 different ways before allowing him to enter. Inside, he found a massive laboratory filled with equipment he'd only read about. Dr. Yuna waited for him at a central workstation, reviewing holographic displays of various weapon designs. "Welcome to your new workspace," she said, gesturing around the room. "Everything in here is at your disposal. Fabrication machines, testing ranges, material synthesizers, and analysis equipment." Admiral Cross wasn't joking about unlimited resources. Kang Dae set down his slingshot on the workstation. Where do I start? At the beginning, Commander Hyuk said, entering from a side door. The Special Operations Officer carried a large case that he set on a nearby table. I contacted Earth and had them send historical weapons and documentation. We need to understand what worked for humans before we start adapting these designs for modern combat. Over the next week, Kang Dae studied everything. He examined ancient bows from various Earth cultures, comparing their designs and understanding why each civilization developed slightly different solutions to the same problem. He practiced with crossbows, feeling how mechanical advantage allowed even untrained users to fire powerful bolts accurately. He learned about atlatls, the ancient spear-throwing tools that had helped humans hunt massive animals thousands of years ago. Dr. Yuna helped him understand the physics behind each weapon. They calculated kinetic energy transfer, projectile trajectories, and impact force. She was amazed at how efficient these simple machines were compared to modern weapons that wasted energy through heat dissipation and electromagnetic generation. A compound bow stores energy mechanically, she explained while examining one of the test models. When you draw it back, the pulleys and cams multiply your force. You might only pull with 30 kilograms of force, but the bow releases with 90 kilograms of force. And it does this without any power source, without any energy signature. It's brilliant. Kang Dae began designing and building. He used modern materials to create stronger, lighter versions of ancient weapons. Carbon fiber replaced wood for bow limbs, making them more durable and powerful. Titanium alloy replaced iron for arrowheads and bolt tips, giving them armor-penetrating capability. High-tension synthetic fibers replaced natural cord for crossbow strings, increasing draw weight and velocity. Each weapon was tested extensively in the division's private firing range. Kang Dae spent hours shooting arrows, firing crossbow bolts, and throwing atlatl spears. His body ached from the constant practice, but his accuracy improved daily. Hana visited when she could, bringing him meals and making sure he didn't work himself to exhaustion. "You're pushing too hard," she said one evening, finding him still at the range past midnight. "You need to rest." 3 months isn't much time, Kang Dae replied, loading another arrow. "I need to perfect these designs and learn to use them well enough to teach others. If I can't demonstrate proficiency, no one will trust the weapons." Hana watched him shoot for a moment before speaking again. "I should tell you something. I'm not just a communications officer. I work for Coalition Intelligence. My real job is analyzing how different species approach problems and develop solutions. I've been studying human innovation patterns for 2 years. Kang Dae lowered his bow and turned to face her. "Why tell me this now?" "Because my reports are part of the reason Admiral Cross approved this project so quickly. I've been documenting human problem-solving approaches. We look at challenges differently than other species, where they see technological gaps to bridge with more advanced technology. Humans look for creative solutions using whatever is available. Your slingshot was a perfect example. So you've been watching me this whole time?" "Yes, but it became more than just observation." Hana stepped closer. "I started caring about you not just as a subject in my reports. I wanted you to know the truth before this project goes any further." Kang Dae considered this information. He should feel manipulated, but instead he felt understood. "What did your reports say about me?" "That you represent the best of human adaptability. That you think in ways that could help the Coalition win this war. And that you're completely unaware of how remarkable you are." She smiled. That last part wasn't in the official reports. Before Kang Dae could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the research facility. Dr. Yuna's voice came through the communication system, urgent and stressed. "Kang Dae, Commander Hyuk, get to the main lab immediately. We have a problem." They ran through the corridors and found Dr. Yuna at her workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing classified documents. Commander Hyuk stood beside her, his expression grim. Several other research staff members were securing equipment and data storage devices. "We've got a leak," Commander Hyuk said bluntly. "Someone in the Coalition's upper command has been sharing information about this project. Our intelligence network intercepted communication suggesting the Kaldrith know about the primitive weapons research." "How much do they know?" Kang Dae asked. "Enough to be curious," Dr. Yuna replied. "They don't understand why we're developing old weapons, but they know something unusual is happening. Their spy networks are actively trying to learn more." "Does this shut down the project?" Kang Dae felt a surge of disappointment. They were making such good progress. "No. Admiral Cross said, entering the lab with 4 armed guards. The Admiral's presence meant this situation was even more serious than Kang Day realized. But it accelerates our timeline. The Council of Admirals has scheduled a demonstration in 1 week. You'll present your arsenal to representatives from 20 different species. If they're convinced, we move forward with field testing immediately. If they're not convinced, the project ends and we've potentially exposed a strategic advantage for nothing. 1 week. Kang Day had planned to spend 3 months perfecting his designs. Now he had 7 days to prove that ancient human weapons could change modern warfare. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing. "What do you need from us?" Commander Hugh asked the Admiral. "I need Cadet Kang Day to create a demonstration that will make 20 skeptical admirals believe that bows and slings can defeat plasma cannons and energy shields. I need proof that this isn't just an interesting theory, but a practical battlefield solution." Admiral Cross turned his attention directly to Kang Day. "Most of the Council thinks this is a waste of resources. They believe I'm chasing nostalgia instead of practical solutions. They think primitive weapons are called primitive for a reason. You need to change their minds." After the Admiral left, Kang Day stood in the silent lab, surrounded by the weapons he'd built. Compound bows, crossbows, atlatls, war darts, bolas, and improved versions of his original slingshot. Each one was functional, but he'd planned to spend weeks refining them further. Now he had to prove they worked against the galaxy's most advanced defenses, with only 7 days of preparation. "I need help," he said quietly. "I can't demonstrate all of these weapons alone. I need other people who can learn to use them." "I'll help," Hana said immediately. "So will I." Tolmon's voice came from the lab entrance. The Sarek student stood there with 3 other classmates from the weapons engineering course. "We heard about the demonstration. Word spreads quickly in the academy. We want to learn." Kang Day looked at them in surprise. Tolmon, who had mocked his slingshot, was now offering to help. The other students, representing 3 different species, nodded their agreement. They wanted to be part of this project. "Can you teach us in 1 week?" Tolmon asked. Kang Day picked up a compound bow and handed it to the Sareks. "We'll find out. Training starts now." For the next 7 days, Kang Day barely slept. He worked with each volunteer, teaching them the fundamentals of using weapons that required physical skill instead of just pressing a trigger. Hana proved naturally talented with the crossbow, her steady hands and careful aim producing consistent accuracy. Tolomon struggled at first with the bow, his reptilian physiology making it difficult to draw smoothly. But he excelled with the atlatl, his whip-like arm motion generating tremendous throwing power. Dr. Yuna prepared the technical presentation, compiling data on energy signatures, cost comparisons, and effectiveness analysis. Commander Hyuk set up the demonstration course, creating scenarios that would showcase each weapon's advantages. He built targets with modern shield generators and armor plating to prove that the primitive weapons could penetrate defenses designed to stop advanced technology. On the morning of the demonstration, Kang Day stood before the Council of Admirals representing 20 species. Some looked curious, others looked skeptical, and a few looked openly hostile to the idea of wasting time on ancient weapons. He took a deep breath and picked up his bow. "Let me show you what humans learned 10,000 years ago." The morning light filtered through the massive observation windows of the Galactic Military Academy, casting long shadows across the weapons engineering lab. Kang Day stood at his workstation, surrounded by students who looked nothing like him. Some had scales, others had multiple arms, and a few had faces he couldn't even describe properly. He was the only human in a class of 40 students from 12 different alien species. Instructor Vexel entered the room, his 6 arms moving independently as he carried various materials. The Thraxian was known throughout the academy as the hardest instructor, someone who never gave praise and rarely gave passing grades. His 4 eyes scanned the room before he spoke in his clicking, translated voice. "Today you receive your midterm assignment. You will design and build a ranged weapon, but there are rules." He paused, letting his words sink in. "No plasma generators, no railgun components, no graviton emitters, no advanced power sources. You will use only what you find in this lab. Basic metals, polymers, elastics, and simple propellants. You have 3 weeks. The demonstration will test accuracy, range, and your ability to hit a moving target." The students immediately began talking among themselves, forming groups and discussing ideas. Kang Day remained quiet, his mind already working on a solution. He walked to the materials storage area and began examining what was available. Tolman, a reptilian Sauric student, slithered over to Kang Day's workstation later that afternoon. His scales rippled with amusement as he looked at the simple sketch on Kang Day's datapad. The human had drawn something that looked like a Y shape with elastic bands. "What is that supposed to be?" Tolman hissed, his forked tongue flickering. "It looks like something a child would play with." Other students gathered around, curious about what the human was designing. They had all created elaborate plans. Some designed compressed air launchers with multiple barrels. Others sketched rocket-propelled dart systems. A few worked on chemically powered projectile guns with complex firing mechanisms. Kang Day smiled but said nothing. He simply continued gathering his materials. He selected a Y-shaped piece of reinforced polymer for the frame, high-tension elastic, cords that were normally used for equipment securing, and a small patch of synthetic leather. The other students laughed and returned to their complex designs, certain that the human would fail. Over the next 3 days, while other students spent hours in the fabrication machines creating intricate parts, Kang Day worked with his hands. He shaped the polymer frame until it fit perfectly in his grip. He attached the elastic cords with precise measurements, testing the tension repeatedly. He crafted the leather patch that would hold the projectile, making sure it was centered and smooth. By the end of the first week, he was finished. His slingshot looked simple, almost too simple. Other students were still assembling their weapons, dealing with parts that didn't fit correctly or mechanisms that jammed. Kang Day spent the remaining time practicing. He found an empty cargo bay during the late-night hours when most students were sleeping. He set up targets at various distances and practiced shooting steel ball bearings. At first, his shots were inconsistent, but night after night, his accuracy improved. He remembered the summers he spent in the Korean countryside with his grandfather, learning to hunt small animals with a traditional slingshot. The old man had taught him about breathing, about feeling the tension in the elastic, about leading a moving target. Hana, a human woman who worked in the academy's communications office, sometimes brought him coffee during these late practice sessions. She would sit quietly and watch him shoot, never disturbing his concentration. After he finished, they would talk about Earth, about home, about how strange it felt to be surrounded by aliens all the time. "Why a slingshot?" she asked one night. "You could have built something more impressive." Kang Day loaded another ball bearing and pulled back the elastic. "Impressive doesn't mean effective. My grandfather used to say that the best tool is the one that never breaks and always works. Complex things have many ways to fail. Simple things just work." The 3 weeks passed quickly. The demonstration day arrived with clear weather and nervous students. The entire class gathered at the Academy's firing range, a large open area with various target configurations. Instructor Vexel stood at the control panel, his multiple arms working the systems that would track each student's performance. "You will each shoot at the stationary targets first," Vexel announced. "Then you will track and hit moving targets. Finally, you will face the real test. My personal surveillance drone will patrol the range in an unpredictable pattern. You have 30 seconds to track it and hit it. This drone has military-grade shielding and evasive programming. It will not be easy." The demonstrations began. The first student, a large insectoid creature, fired his compressed air launcher. It hit the stationary targets well but lacked range. When the moving targets appeared, his shots were too slow. The drone test was a complete failure. His weapon couldn't track fast enough. Student after student faced similar problems. The rocket dart systems were powerful but couldn't adjust trajectory mid-flight. The chemical propellant guns had good range but several jammed after a few shots. Tolman's elaborate dart gun worked perfectly on stationary targets but overheated during the moving target test, failing completely. By the time Kang Day's turn came, more than half the class had failed the drone test. He walked to the firing line carrying his simple slingshot. The other students whispered and laughed. Some made jokes about primitive humans. Even some of the instructors watching from the observation deck seemed skeptical. Kang Day ignored them all. He loaded a steel ball bearing into the leather patch and raised the slingshot. The stationary targets were easy. Each shot hit center mass. The moving targets required more focus, but his practice paid off. He led each target slightly, compensating for their movement. Every shot connected. Then came the drone test. Instructor. Vexel activated his personal surveillance drone, a sleek machine about the size of a human head, covered in sensors and protected by energy shielding. It launched into the air and began moving in random patterns. Left, right, up, down, never staying in one place for more than a second. Kang Dae watched it move, his breathing slow and steady. He loaded the ball bearing and raised the slingshot. The drone zipped left, then suddenly accelerated upward. Kang Dae's eyes tracked it smoothly. He pulled back the elastic, feeling the tension build in his arms. He remembered his grandfather's words. Don't aim where it is, aim where it will be. Kang Dae calculated the drone's acceleration pattern in his mind. He adjusted for the slight breeze coming through the range's ventilation system. He led the target by 2 meters, accounting for the time the projectile would take to travel the distance. He released. The steel ball bearing streaked through the air with a sharp crack. It moved almost too fast to see. The drone was still climbing when the projectile struck its central sensor array with devastating force. Sparks exploded from the impact point. The drone spun wildly, its programming failing, and crashed into the safety netting at the edge of the range. Complete silence fell over the firing range. No one spoke. No one moved. They all stared at the smoking remains of the instructor's drone, then at the human standing calmly with his primitive slingshot. Instructor Vexil walked slowly to retrieve his destroyed drone. His 4 eyes examined the impact point where the ball bearing had punched completely through military-grade shielding. He turned the broken machine over in his hands, then looked at Kang Dae with an expression the human couldn't quite read. Explain your weapon, Vexil said quietly. Kang Dae held his slingshot steady as Instructor Vexil waited for an explanation. The other students crowded closer, wanting to hear how a primitive weapon had destroyed a military drone that some of their advanced designs couldn't even track properly. The silence in the firing range felt heavy, expectant. It's called a slingshot, Kang Dae began, his voice calm. Humans invented it over 3,000 years ago. The design is simple. This Y-shaped frame holds 2 elastic cords that store potential energy when stretched. When released, that energy transfers to the projectile, launching it at high velocity. He demonstrated by pulling back the empty slingshot, showing how the elastic stretched. The advantage is efficiency. Almost all the energy I put into pulling back these cords goes directly into moving the projectile forward. There's no complex mechanism to absorb energy, no moving parts that create friction, just direct transfer of force. Vexil examined the slingshot more closely with 2 of his hands while his other hand still held the broken drone. But this is so simple. How did it penetrate shielding that stopped Tolmon's explosive darts? Because the shielding wasn't designed to stop it, Kang Dae explained. Modern shields are programmed to detect and deflect high-energy plasma, hypersonic bullets, and explosive projectiles. They look for specific energy signatures and velocities. My steel ball bearing travels much slower than a railgun bullet. It produces no energy signature, no heat bloom, no electromagnetic pulse. The shield sensors never registered it as a threat until it was too late. A murmur went through the crowd of students. Several of them were already recalculating their understanding of weapons design. If simple weapons could bypass advanced defenses, what did that mean for modern warfare? Vexil set down his broken drone. And the accuracy? You hit a target moving in evasive patterns. That requires sophisticated tracking systems. Kang Dae tapped his temple. I use this. Human eyes evolved for persistence hunting. We tracked prey across long distances by predicting movement patterns. I watched your drone's behavior and calculated where it would be. The weapon doesn't need sophisticated systems if the user has skill. The instructor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought in Thraxian body language. You will wait here, he said finally. Do not leave the range. Vexil walked away quickly, speaking into a communication device. The students surrounded Kang Dae, asking questions in a dozen different languages, their translators overlapping in a confusing mess of sound. Tolmon pushed through the crowd, his earlier mockery replaced with genuine curiosity. How long did you practice? The Sorix asked. Every night for 2 weeks, Kang Dae replied. Simple weapons require more skill to use effectively. A plasma rifle can hit a target even if your aim is slightly off, because the energy bolt has a wide impact area. This requires precision. Hana appeared at the edge of the firing range, looking worried. She had heard about the demonstration's outcome through the Academy's communication networks. She caught Kang Dae's eye and he gave her a small reassuring nod. Whatever happened next, he had done his best. 20 minutes later, Instructor Vexel returned with 3 other figures. One was Admiral Cross, a towering insectoid Valkyrie whose chitin armor gleamed under the range lights. The Admiral commanded the Coalition's Military Research Division. Beside him walked Dr. Yuna, one of the few human scientists working at the Academy, and Commander Hyuk, a human special operations officer whose reputation was legendary even among the alien military forces. The students quickly moved aside as the high-ranking officers approached. Kang Dae straightened, suddenly aware that his midterm demonstration had attracted very serious attention. Admiral Cross's mandibles clicked together as he examined the broken drone and the simple slingshot. "Show me again," the Admiral said. "I want to see it work." Instructor Vexel activated another drone, this one moving even faster than the first. Kang Dae loaded his slingshot and tracked the target. His hands were steadier now despite the pressure. He had already proven the weapon worked. This was just confirmation. He pulled back, led the target, and released. The steel ball bearing struck the second drone perfectly, disabling it mid-flight. Admiral Cross made a chittering sound that the translator interpreted as impressed satisfaction. No energy signature. Our most advanced sensors detected nothing until impact. "Do you understand what this means?" Kang Dae nodded slowly. "It means you can't see the attack coming if you're relying on modern detection systems." "Exactly." The Admiral turned to face the assembled students and instructors. "The Coalition has been fighting the Kaldreth Dominion for 6 years. They have sophisticated sensor networks that detect every plasma weapon, every railgun, every explosive device from kilometers away. Their automated defenses respond before our soldiers can even get close. We've lost thousands of troops trying to approach their installations." Dr. Yuna stepped forward, her datapad displaying energy readings from the slingshot demonstration. "We've been so focused on advancing our weapons technology that we forgot a basic principle. Sometimes the solution isn't more advanced. Sometimes it's different. The Kaldreth defensive systems have a weakness. They weren't programmed to stop primitive weapons because no one thought primitive weapons could be effective." Commander Hyuk picked up the slingshot, testing its weight and balance. The scarred veteran handled it with respect despite its simplicity. "I lost half my unit last month trying to infiltrate a Kaldreth sensor station. Every weapon we carried lit up their detection grid like fireworks. We were dead before we got within a kilometer." He looked at Kang Dae directly. "Could you make more of these? Different types?" "Yes," Kang Dae said. "Humans developed hundreds of projectile weapons before we invented guns and energy weapons. Bows, crossbows, atlatls, slings, throwing spears. All of them silent. All of them effective. And none of them produce energy signatures." Admiral Cross's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement. "I'm giving you an assignment, Cadet Kang Dae. You will report to Research Division 7 starting tomorrow. Your task is to develop a complete arsenal of these primitive weapons, adapted for modern military use. You will have access to our best materials, our fabrication facilities, and any resources you need." "How long do I have?" Kang Dae asked. 3 months. In 3 months, we're planning a major operation against a Kaldreth command station. If your weapons can help us succeed where advanced technology failed, you'll change warfare across the entire galaxy." The Admiral paused. "But if this is just luck, if these weapons can't be reliably used in actual combat, then we've wasted valuable time and resources. Can you do this?" Kang Dae thought about his grandfather, about those summers learning to hunt with simple tools. He thought about humanity's history of surviving on a dangerous planet by being clever instead of strong. He looked at the broken drones and his simple slingshot that had caused so much disruption. "Yes, sir, I can do this." Admiral Cross nodded. "Then you start tomorrow. This project is classified. You'll tell no one outside your research team what you're working on. Dismissed." The officers left as quickly as they'd arrived. The students slowly dispersed, still talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. Instructor Vexel approached Kang Dae one final time. "I've been teaching weapons engineering for 15 years, the Thraxian said quietly. I've seen thousands of designs, from the brilliant to the foolish. Yours is the first that made me question everything I thought I knew about modern warfare." He extended one of his hands in the human gesture of respect he'd learned. "Whatever happens next, you've already succeeded in the most important way. You've made us think differently." Kang Day shook the offered hand. As he left the firing range, he found Hana waiting for him outside. She'd been watching from the observation deck and had seen everything. "So you're going to change galactic warfare with a slingshot?" she asked, a smile playing at her lips. "Not just a slingshot," Kang Day replied. "I'm going to show them what humans learned 10,000 years ago. That you don't need the most advanced weapon. You just need the right weapon for the situation." They walked together through the academy corridors, past alien students and instructors, past walls decorated with displays of advanced plasma rifles and graviton cannons. Kang Day carried his simple slingshot in his hand, a primitive tool that had just changed everything. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, he would have to prove that humanity's oldest weapons could still be its most effective. But tonight he allowed himself to feel proud. He had taken a device that was older than recorded history and shown an entire galaxy that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways. The future of warfare was about to look a lot like the past.